We are facing ill-being caused by toxic workplaces.
More and more people speaking out, I want to leave my workplace.
If people you are with, they don't multiply you, they are dividing you.
And do people know they're toxic?
Transforming workplace culture, Montserrat Ventosa is a psychologist, educator, and co-founder of Great Place to Work Europe.
For me, a red flag is I instead of we.
Taking credit?
You are a leader. You are not just a personal contributor. Every action is magnified. HR has been giving perks and nice things, but that doesn't motivate people. Toxicity is all around us.
Who are more currently toxic bosses, females or males?
I want to say one word.
Welcome to Chat GRG. We're diving into a topic that affects more people than we realize: toxic workplaces. From manipulating managers to burnout cultures to office politics and silent suffering, workplace toxicity isn't just frustrating, it's damaging. But how do you recognize it? How do you survive it? But most importantly, how do you break free? Joining me today is Montserrat Ventosa, a psychologist and an educator on making work a better place for all. Yeah. Thank you so much, Montserrat. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. Very, very eager to jump into this topic that we don't realize is as common as it is, toxic workplaces.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for having me, Robyn and Osama. I mean, it's amazing to be here. Talking about this is like the elephant in the room, right? The toxic workplaces, nobody want to mention it, but it's unfortunately more common than we would like to.
And for us, I mean, as a headhunting firm, I mean, we're getting that more and more, that people speaking out, I want to leave my workplace because of toxicity. And so it's almost as if it's growing. Yes.
I believe many factors have influenced and have led us to here, but we are facing a ill-being caused by toxic workplaces. And the sooner companies and HR realize we have a problem to face and to fix, the better, because now is a drain. I mean, you're draining talent because the best talent are going to leave the first. Mm-hmm. And you're going to lose excellent talent. And then the bad ones you're going to fire. And what are companies going to be left with?
That's so true.
The mediocre middle.
When you say toxic workplaces, whose responsibility is it? Is it the company, the leaders, both?
That is a great question. And as everything in life, I don't think is a simple question. I think is a systemic answer that involves organizations and HR, the policies that they have been implementing too much base or bias towards perks and benefits, leaders who are not ready to lead because we've been training managers, management business schools.
Yes,
not leadership business schools, right? So now then we have managers who we are asking them to lead change, lead uncertain times, lead to the unknown, and they're simply not ready.
So how do you know when someone's ready?
When they can create flourishment and growth around them, not toxicity. I think it's very hard. I mean, we will have to change business schools, HR, but mainly the first thing is mindset, because people also have, answering to your previous question, have a responsibility because we can choose. Toxicity is all around us, but also beauty and also flourishment. So if everybody focused toward toxicity because nobody's doing anything, you will become toxic. So people also have a responsibility to say, look, I'm surrounded by toxic, but I'm going to try to make it better in this little bit of control I can have. So I think it's complex, but also simpler than it seems to solve.
So it's like a hybrid mix of both.
Yeah.
Osama, when we're recruiting as well, how do you know if someone's toxic? No.
Honestly, I mean, it's difficult because when they, in that interaction that we have with them, they're putting up their best show. And when they go and meet with their potential employer, they're again putting up their best show.
Yeah. So the signs don't come early? Are there early signs that we can detect?
Well, I don't know. Maybe this will be a little bit controversial, but I don't think people is toxic by birth, by nature. I believe we become toxic by the context, right? So I believe, and I've seen it. I've seen how somebody very toxic suddenly becomes the most positive person in the room. So I think it's the environment that can cause, and I have seen how often the most toxic people in a workplace, the negative, the ones that complain the most, everything is, oh no, and they are, creating rumors, often is people who were very engaged, but they felt like backstab, or they felt betrayed by the company or mistreated, and then they turn
into toxic.
Into toxic.
That's so interesting.
Yes.
So you cannot enter it doesn't mean you have to enter an organization toxic. You can actually become it from the organization.
Yes.
And how would you stop that? Like what would, you just mentioned HR. What would they need to do to protect that sacred? I mean, I feel GIG has a very positive environment. You even said it when you walked in.
Yes. You can look.
Thank you, Robyn.
It's very sacred. It's very sacred. And so, how do we protect that?
You're totally right. I visit more than 500 companies in my life, and I always say I can know about the culture by sitting in reception. I often get early to the place, and I sit, and how people interact around me without knowing who I am, it tells me a great deal about how that culture is. So I believe the toxicity is in the air.
You mentioned it before we said in that it was the smell.
Yeah.
You could smell toxic.
You can smell toxic. And here you can see, that is so welcoming, and especially it contrasts with the outside. I was like, what? Oh my God, this is amazing. So, but answering your question, what companies can do, the first thing is to address that. And it's like anything in life. If you have a problem, the first step is to acknowledge you have a problem, not try to cover it. I believe many, not only HR, but many directors know their workplaces are toxic.
And do people know they're toxic? I mean,
that's a good question. Partly, I think if you have self-awareness, you will realize, however, when you are under stress and you are in a situation, you may not know you are being toxic. And then you may decide to leave. But probably, Osama, you have more insights about if people know are toxic.
I mean, when it comes to the leadership, the management, the leadership, I personally think there is a lack of self-awareness.
Yes.
Because if that awareness was there, we wouldn't be having what we have right now. Yeah. I mean, look, at leadership level, who would want the exact phenomena that you just talked about, that the best people leave, the worst people you fire, what are you left with?
Yeah.
Right? So
the poison, that's just going to stay.
Yes, the poison. Yeah.
So I think there is that self-awareness is lacking.
It's lacking.
Yeah.
And how would you approach someone? So let's say I knew someone was toxic in the business.
Yeah.
Where do I go?
Well, I think when somebody is toxic, one of the first interventions you can do is to show them. I remember this guy, Paco, in Spain, Paco.
Love the name.
And he was he was working in a multinational company, but they had a factory, and they went through restructuring, and it was very radical because they were losing lots of money. They were losing market because a competitor, basically they have a patent and it expires, and then in China they create the same product. So it was 3 years losing money, and this new CEO came to fix it or close it. So the first thing was fire lots of people, 30%. Yeah, because they were drowning money anyway. So with the people who stayed, he did a survey. He said, I'm going to do a survey. Imagine the survey was like, oh my God, the survey is terrible. Everybody's very unhappy. Because
they were honest.
They were honest. And then we did some focus groups, and anyway, but this Paco, I got distracted. This Paco, in the survey of his group, people were saying this, or manager of the factory, he's terrible, he's very toxic. In fact, they say toxic. People were crying in the bathrooms, the ladies, it was a factory. No. It was very upsetting. And then I said, but he was very good at his job. He was very good.
That's often the case.
That's often the case. Right. That's what I'm bringing it up. The results were okay. However, when you look closely, there were some things. Anyway, they say, can you speak to him? What can we do? And I said, okay, I'm going to show him the results because the survey had open questions. And I show him. I see it. I did a coaching session with him. And he was so upset. He said, I've been 30 years here and nobody has told me this. Why? I don't want my team crying. What am I doing, Montserrat? Please help me. And I explained, listen, I know you have good intentions, but you have to learn about the impact of your actions. You are a leader. You are not just a personal contributor. Every action is magnified. So you need to make sure. And only seeing those results is shifting. And the next survey, all those problems were fixed. Because he realized he was having an impact. And often, many companies, probably you know, they want to do a survey when they are good. Come on.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, I'm going to the doctor when I'm healthy. Hey, doctor, I'm healthy. Excuse me, no. You want to do, in this case, a survey to tell you where are your pain points. And if the pain point is this person is doing this, tell him. However, you have to do it in the right way. I've done so many training for leaders. And as you say, it's like, you say, this self-awareness or psychological safety. Oh, yeah, I do it. No, you don't. So you have to treat with respect because leaders don't know how to deal with this, because what I say, they are equipped to manage. And manage is to manage what exists. But if you are asking them to create something new, they can't. They lack the skills. So they become toxic themselves because they are stressed. Sometimes they are in panic mode.
Okay, and they're creating their own toxic environment that they're living in, and they start recruiting everyone in it.
Yes.
Oh, that's so sad. That he must have been really shocked. I mean, I didn't expect that story to end like that.
Just following on from that point, when you mentioned about that person being in the company for 30 years,
yes,
I feel that it's easier when there's someone who has been in the company for a long time and is expected to be there for a further longer time, versus in multinationals where assignments are like, a year and a half to 2 to 3 years.
yes.
And this person is like, you know what, I'm just going to quickly try to get the results as a manager, not a leader. I'm good at what I do. I'm going to push, get my results, and then move on. And then when it falls apart, because of all the issues like mental health and burnout and whatever, all these issues that we eventually come across, he or she is already gone.
So it's not his problem anymore.
And now it's somebody else who's having to deal with it.
Yes, that's a very good point. And also it comes, or we need to pay attention of how we measure the success of certain leaders, because the culture is the responsibility of the leaders. Culture is not HR doing a values campaign. Culture is how we do things here, around here. And what is the smell, the feeling you have. And that is the responsibility of leaders mainly, and everybody's. So you should, you're leaving, but how is the culture? It's part of your responsibility to nurture that culture.
Who are more currently toxic bosses, females or males?
I want to say one word, but I feel like... Currently. Female.
Okay. Did you expect that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
There is this saying that there is a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And that was said, I don't remember her name, now it's not coming to me, but the phrase is very famous. But unfortunately, I'm all about the women. I'm a woman. I got prizes for supporting other women. But unfortunately, still some women have adopted the bad style of men. So many women, we have very bad bosses who are women. So that's why I say female. Although I didn't want to, because I want to be sorority.
No, that's why I said currently. Because
currently,
of that whole masculine, feminine energy. Actually, you've spoken about this before. About women taking on a masculine kind of energy when really we should be sitting in our female energy.
Yeah, because it's great. It's nurturing. It's positive. It's multiplying. We multiply. We give life, and we should be more embracing our nature. I think one of the issues precisely going back is how do you know a manager is a good manager or a bad manager, toxic manager or not, or toxic leader. And one of the issues is we talk about psychological safety or we talk about trust, but what we really need, the first thing is hope. I mean, we talk
Yes.
about, like in Great Place to Work, we measure trust. Okay, but trust is believing you say what you say we're going to do, and we do. Walk the talk. But you have to do the talk, and you have to create a vision of the future. And the problem, again, and maybe I'm repeating myself, but that's a key message. If you are a leader, if you're a manager and you have an MBA, you have to start learning to lead. And that's very difficult for certain professions, engineers, IT people, because we are not framed to understand people. And what we are learned, or we are taught to do, is how to manage the day-to-day, the how, but not how to give a vision to people. Okay, we don't know nothing. We're going to have to be restructuring every 2 years, but it's nothing we can do. We have to prepare people for this changeability, how you create people ready to change. And how is not with the how, but with the why. A little bit, not the Simon Sinek, why we're doing this, not. Why are we, where are we going? As a leader, you have to be able to create a vision.
So there's transparency in what you're doing in direction?
Yes. And maybe it's, listen, guys, we don't know, but we have to get ready to change, be ready to change, because we are losing market, because this we can see there is a trend. So just give them a vision, and to get anything, you will know your business. And just make people enthusiastic, because if people know where they're going and why they are going, they will be able to tolerate any how we're getting there.
And I love when you said enthusiasm.
Yes.
Being enthusiastic, because a lot of people, I mean, the first thing they do, resistant to change.
Yes.
Something's changing.
Yes.
It's going to disrupt my everyday. It's overwhelming me. But if you can embrace it positively and say,
Yes.
we're all in it together. We're
Yes.
all in this mess.
Because they don't...
Let's just at least go together in the same direction.
Exactly. And we're not sure, but together we will get there. And everybody can explain it in their own way. But if you make people hopeful, they will not be hopeless or helpless. They will be like, ready. Okay, I trust you. You're going to guide me there, and together we will get there. And I think there is a lack of that. There is too much scarcity. Leaders are restructuring. Why we think we are restructuring? We are restructuring why? Because we want to reduce cost. But that's okay. But, why you don't think about increasing the top line? How can you create more revenue? Not how you can cut corners. That's very cheap management and bad management, but how you make the top line bigger. And that's, you need your team. Hey guys, we have to do this here. How do we do it? Bring them together. And I think that's one of the things missing. And that creates toxicity, because if they don't know something, they are not sharing. People know you're holding back. Why are you not telling me? You're going to be fired. Why? I mean, in that case, I shared before, the CEO say, listen, I'm so sorry I have to fire all these people, but I didn't have an option. There were people from factories, he explained it. Imagine you are investing money and the bank does, he explained in their words to understand. And he said, listen, I want to make this company better so not all of you lose your jobs. I want everybody to maintain their job, and this is what it takes. And we involve everybody in designing some sort of way of working together.
Right. And it's the delivery, right? You said the kindness.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's going to feel not great losing their job.
No.
But if it can be done in a nice way.
Yes.
Or understandable way.
Yes.
Rather than always being left confused and why did you get...
Exactly. I think that's kindness is always, a no-brainer, I think so.
You seem very passionate about leadership. You've written a book on Who Changes Wins.
Yeah.
Why have you gotten into what you do today? What's your why?
Look, my why is, I grew up believing, I saw my dad, in the 80s in Spain when he had a job. He was terrible, always complaining. He's a carpenter, right? But and when he didn't have a job, oh my God, I don't have a job. So I grew up fascinated by this work world that can make people very unhappy. And I guess that's why I studied psychology. And I believe profoundly, and I've seen it, in Mexico, in developing countries, that work is the only way to grow and have prosperity in your life as a person or as an organization. So work has the potential to create a better world. But the way we've been doing work, it hasn't been the most optimal. When we look at how many people, the last results of Gallup, only less than 2 out of 10 people are engaged at work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Shocking. I'm
yeah,
honestly.
yeah. Or the other day, a recent report from Gallup say the most important attribute or characteristic of a leader is hope.
Hope?
Hope. People need to have not only trust in the leaders, but hope in that the leaders will lead them. You know, hopefully, hope
Yeah.
at the end of the day is being positive about the result.
Yes.
And
you
that's
said,
the thing that's most lacking, right?
yeah, the hope. You said 2 out of 10 people?
In the last report from Gallup, only 2 out of 10 people are engaged at work. 80% are not engaged.
And they're just dragging their feet to make
Yes.
money?
Yes, well, I don't think people want to drag their feet, but they feel disengaged because the relationship between people and companies it needs to be
It's a job.
shift. Yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to be a shift because it has become very transactional. You know, HR has been giving perks and nice things, but that doesn't motivate people, and that's nothing new. Hertzberg talk about it. You know, what motivates people is the control, the autonomy, being part of something. But I think with the movements and part mea culpa, right? Because Great Place to Work, we start measuring how many HR policies you have, what do you do for your people, and that has confused. I mean, some companies in the US are stopping perks. They don't give more benefits because what people want is a culture.
Oh, that's super interesting. You also, I know that you mentioned when we spoke earlier that you co-founded Great Place to Work in Europe.
Yes.
And I know that we see that stamp everywhere, right?
Yes.
The Great Place to Work.
Yes.
And does that hold credibility? What does...
That's a long story, but yeah, I was part of the team in Europe in 2005 when it wasn't in Europe, so it was a grant. And at the time it was, that's why I joined it, because it was, how can we make work great, right? But it took a subtle shift into what do you give your people? And think about it. If you are with me in this relationship because what I give you, it's very transactional. Mm-hmm. But people is going to forget what you give them. It's going to forget what you say, but they are never going to forget how you treat them. And that's the culture. How a smell in the office. How did you feel when you receive an email? You know, the emails carry energy, and energy, nothing metaphysical, only you notice how people is, in how they write, in how. So I think Great Place to Work lost the point. And it's a model, sorry to say, that is based in the 80s, you know, and trust. So it's a great model, but it has made companies focus too much on what you give people. And it's not about what you give, it's how you treat them. You said it, Osama. How you treat them in the day-to-day, how you treat them since they see an advert in LinkedIn to when they leave the company. It says a lot.
The exit, right? That's very important.
The exit. It says a lot because it leaves a bad taste, you know. And now everybody can know those things.
How do you see, you know, the Gen Z and the big gap between management? There seems to be a lot of headbutting. So back in the days when you're being hired, you used to aspire to want to work for specific leaders. I mean, I was like, oh, great. You know, lots
You're
to
big
learn
on
from.
that, right? For you, it was all about leadership,
It's all about leadership. Yeah. And that's what got me into personal branding.
Yes.
It's like, why are we working for big corporations when it's the leaders that make all the difference every day?
Yes.
But Gen Z aren't really looking up to leaders as much. They're more looking aligned with their purpose. So that's shift that also that we're seeing. So what's advice in terms of managing that? And if I was a Gen Z, what advice would you give a Gen Z going into a corporation?
Where I think Gen Z they look for leaders who can inspire them or who can give them a vision of what is going to take them what they are doing, which we also value, as you say, you know, is your leader that tells you, hey, we're going to do this, but we're going to change the world, you know. I remember when I worked at Inditex before, we talk about fast fashion, and we knew we were doing something great, you know, and you were part of something. That purpose you don't have to hire a Simon Sinek to tell you what is your purpose. You just need to find it. Every organization knows. And I think we forget. Companies forget, and I think Generation Z is reminding us what we all want. Because you're saying, I'm Generation X. You know, so I want that. You want somebody that can not motivate you, because at the end your motivation is yours and you have to be protagonist of your own, but you want a leader that can create that future and you're part of it.
Yeah.
You want to be...
I'm completely with that. Like, if you're both on the same path and you're reaching the same goal and you're on the same purpose, it's just fluidly.
Yes.
If it literally works.
And actually, going back to one data point from Great Place to Work, because Great Place to Work, the model measures trust, and you measure how much you trust the organization, how much you trust your leaders, and how much you trust your colleagues, right? It's a great model. And what we notice is when you don't trust your organization, then you go to your leaders. So low trust in the organization means, okay, I have my leaders to trust and to guide me. But if that is low, then you go to your colleagues. Then, camaraderie is important. But then
Which can also go negative, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It can be negative, but it can be positive where you're saying we are on this together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
However, that is not sustainable. At the end, the leaders are irreplaceable.
Speaking of Gen Z, and something that's trending now, they've made it very, let's say, a trend, and others have caught, I think even the millennials, Gen X have caught on to it, that this is the problem of narcissists. Okay.
Oh.
And it's almost like everybody around is a narcissist. Is it that bad?
Part of that is that now there is too much information, a little bit woke sometimes, not informed, people writing books to get popular, and misusing certain words. I mean, narcissism is a serious personality disorder that can cause lots of damage. However, it is true that many of the managers we have created, they have very big egos, which will fall in the same category. And it's people, when you hear them talk, it's all about the I. And apparently they didn't get the memo of there is no I in team, right?
Yeah.
And then, but
there's a me.
Exactly. There is a me in the
throw that in.
But that is true. I think Generation Z they are team players, right? And they play games. For instance, my son plays games, video games. So they're more team players. And often they don't want to be in the spotlight. And probably you have some Gen Z that they want to be in the spotlight. But I do believe in the corporate world, unfortunately, those who stayed in the middle, many of them have developed certain narcissistic traits because it has been, we have the up or out in performance development, the 9 boxes, and then you have to be up or out. So it forces you to be too competitive with others, too much about you. Look what I've done. And, Microsoft have popularized the up or out. Or you were in the top.
What can you explain that up or
Yes,
out?
the 9 boxes is how you measure performance. And then you classify people in the 9 boxes. And the top one is high potential and high performance.
Okay.
And you will be there or you will be fired.
It's a bit overwhelming.
That was a culture on many multinationals, that in the quadrants you will be there. And Microsoft was famous for that many years ago, before Satya Nadella. And he has talked about psychopaths and leadership, because when he arrived, he says, listen, this culture is going to change, and we are removing this up or out, this performance, this individualistic culture that where narcissistic flourish. And we are going to replace it with growth mindset. And before that, Microsoft was losing competitiveness. They will have worse results. And if we have now a PowerPoint, we could see how since he arrived to Microsoft is out the charts now. They outperform the competition because he changed the mindset. He removed this individualistic culture and he promoted growth mindset. In growth mindset, by definition, you are not narcissistic. You are a team player. You enjoy when others win, and we...
That's the infinite mindset, right? Very, very...
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
Yes.
So with narcissism, how would you know... How would you know that someone is a narcissist? Is it something like a toxic person? Is it something that you're born with, or is it something that's created?
Well, I think some people...
Do we create monsters?
Well, I think some people had more tendencies. At the end of the day, personality, that's why I say there are trends. And I believe nothing is fixed. You can, myself, when I was in my 30s and I was an HR director before 30, I was more narcissistic than I am now. And I have bigger ego because I was insecure. So many insecurities, if not with self-awareness, they become exaggerations and your ego gets bigger, right? But
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you said that so fluently and so comfortable that you were self-aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your category.
I remember in HR, you could hire and fire people. You're very powerful and you're young. So I was much more arrogant. Now sometimes I feel ashamed, but then I can tell people how not to be. But so I believe you are not narcissistic or not. It's your personality, and personality is fluid. You can change.
But if you're going into a workplace,
Yeah.
what's a red flag of someone that's narcissist before we label them?
Well, when somebody talks too much about themselves, I think that's a red flag. When
Taking credit?
Yes, taking too much.
Taking credit is a red flag.
When you hear a leader, for me, saying, "Oh, I did this," for me, a red flag is I instead of we. That's organizations. Instant. Yeah, that's an instant red flag.
No, I love that analogy. It's very true.
Yeah,
because it's either you instantly feel that it was done with a team,
yes,
which it most definitely probably was,
yes,
or you're just putting yourself at the forefront.
Yes, and as a leader, as a real leader, you have to take it on the chin for your team. I mean, you are accountable for your team, and if your team do a mistake, you cannot throw them under the bus because you're throwing yourself. So as a leader, really, there is no I. It's your team. When the team fails, it's your fault, and when they win, it's their win. Like a coach in football, right? Simple.
That is so rare.
I had great leaders. No, I had great leaders, to be honest. I had one extremely bad one. Extremely bad.
We all have one.
We all have. It's a story.
And I tell that my children, if people you are with, they don't multiply you, they don't make you feel better, they are dividing you. And that is not a good leader. But what I was going to say, a narcissistic will be sometimes even more manipulative, and what we need now, there are leaders that they get the pyramid turned around. And the team is not to serve you as a leader. That's over. If you still believe in that, you're obsolete. As a person, as a leader, as an employee, now we need people and leaders that serve their team. If you get all your 100 people positively impacting the rest, you're multiplied as a leader, serving your team. Leaders should not be doing anything else but making sure the team can do the job amazingly.
I love your analogy as well, to multiply, not divide.
Exactly, to multiply, not divide, and you serving your employees as it's the servant leadership.
I had a leader, the best line a leader's ever told me. I was stepping in from a director into head of marketing for the first time, and I looked at him thinking, I'm not qualified. I mean, no one's qualified getting into any role above the next one, to be fair.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, he's like, don't worry, I give you permission to fail.
Exactly.
And till today, I haven't forgot that.
Exactly.
And that's what I try to pass down, because he gave me the most safest environment ever. But he said, make the mistake once, amazing. Make it twice, Robyn.
Yeah. But Robyn, that is psychological safety. Often we think psychological safety is people talking about their problems. No, psychological safety is that you have permission to fail. You have permission to be vulnerable. You have permission to be you. Because otherwise, if you are not you, you are dividing yourself and you're never going to perform fully because your energy is invested in repressing this part, not saying that. That's why the worst teams, the most toxic, is the teams that they look up to the leader to see what to do, instead of serving their customers, serving the bottom line or the top line, making sure they are doing the best. They are people just looking, how is the leader today? No, and that's
waiting for them to
to
leave before you can leave the office.
Exactly,
I think that's the worst.
Exactly, you can say, "Oh, how is the leader today? Oh, don't tell them this problem. Come on, come on." Or group thinking. Group thinking is the worst. When everybody's thinking the same, no one's thinking. I mean, if you have a team that is not able to tell you what is not working, what are the problems, which mistakes are, you're never going to improve, and then you're never going to grow fully as a company. You're never going to be prosperous and make lots of money, I think.
Love it.
And, it was this survey I came across once, nothing scientific, not academic. I usually don't like these things. I'm very, academic. I like to check my sources. But this one was one of these surveys somebody has done, I don't know, many years ago in Facebook, I think, and have asked people, have you ever done something at work badly a mistake, something bad on purpose.
Oh.
80% of the people say what you guess, yes or not?
Yes?
80%.
I don't know. I'm just guessing
Yes.
for theatrics.
80% of the people did something badly at work on
Purposely.
purposely. And the
Why?
reason?
What? Oh.
As a revenge to their bosses.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Am I the only one shocked? I just guessed 80 because I
Yeah.
was.
Because people,
going left wing.
For me, the definition of engagement is doing a good job when nobody sees you. And when nobody's looking is when you really can do a bad job, a very good job. And if you force people against their will to do something they don't want to do, what is going to happen? When you're not looking, 80% of people will choose to do badly too. Control what they can, because that is a toxic behavior, but it's induced by a system that is removing all what they can control. And if you remove any ability to control anything, people is going to be hopeless. And in that place, they're going to be, stress, burnout. And from there, nothing good grows. That's my opinion.
The burnout is quite popular. I think I don't know if it's still happening, but there's this whole, it's still
burnout
happening.
is a thing. I
There's
mean,
a whole phase of
Yeah.
everyone being burnt out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a theory that the immense consumption of social media, is causing that. What's your view on this? And is that a reason for an increased amount of burnout, anxiety, and?
In my opinion, it's neuroscientifically based. I've been researching this for the last 3 years before I came here. The reason why we have more mental health than ever, I believe 70% of people is suffering or will suffer stress or some mental health problems, is due to the fact that social media, but also the world is so uncertain. In our parents' time, you knew you have your job for 30 years, you have your house, your car. All that is no longer valid. So people is facing a future that is very uncertain. Hence, they cannot control. Everything is controlled for you, and that lack of control creates what the psychologists name learned helplessness. But now, neuroscience has shown that we don't learn that we are helpless. When we feel overwhelmed by the environment, an area of our brain called dorsal raphe nucleus activates and makes you feel helpless, frozen. You do nothing. You can't take any decision. You feel blocked. You feel like
a paralysis?
Yeah, like a paralysis, because your body is trying to protect you from that much change, which is a threat. And the only way to turn off that area of your brain is with the feeling of control and hope. The last book of Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, is called The Circuit of Hope, because helplessness is not learned. It's neurologically activated when you feel overwhelmed before cortisol, which is the stress. And it releases anxiety. And the only way to turn it off, because it's in a very old area of our brain, is with the feeling there is hope. It's something you can do to escape that threat.
So how do you go get hope? Because if you have all of these feelings, how do you actively go find hope?
Exactly. The way, in my opinion, is to focus your attention in what you can control. They will be, and that's why workplaces are I'm going to take all the control from you. It's not going to work, because if you give autonomy and a little bit of control to people, they can use that to really feel the hope. And if the leader is saying, listen, we don't know what's going to happen, but we are in this. Let's do it. The person will say, okay, I'm going to focus in this. So in your life, you can focus not in the million things that are not working, the toxicity, the bad news. You can focus in what can I do now? I can be kind to this person. I can enjoy this. Because our attention by default goes to the toxic, to the negativity.
Yes.
And we have to bring it back to the positive. I go in Sharjah, there's lots of traffic. Every morning going to HCT, I can say, oh my God, I'm going to die in this traffic. Look at this driving in the roundabouts. Yeah. What is this? Especially as Europeans, roundabouts are sacred. We drive them very well. And here's oh my God. Yes. But I can say every car I irritated. Look at this. Or I can say, you know what? Inshallah. Let's go and do it. And it's fine. I'm going to focus in what I can control. I'm going to listen to the music I like. I'm going to think positively. But it requires an effort. That's why we cannot be victims of our thoughts.
Yeah.
We have to be protagonists. We have to say, you know what, my attention can go in, how horrible is this? Or, how beautiful we met here, Robyn, through LinkedIn.
Yes,
Amazingly.
I know. Amazing.
And I'm so happy to be here. And that's
We are too.
great. And but I have to focus because otherwise my mind will go, is it going to be interesting for your audience? Am I doing a good job? Maybe not. Maybe they regret having invited me. And I have to say, no,
The
I'm
imposter
gonna-
syndrome, is that part of
a
imposter
little
syndrome?
bit, yeah. And you have to, but we are not victims of the imposter syndrome. We can choose and say, you know what, my attention, I'm going to focus in this. I teach my students, pay attention, because pay means attention is expensive. So you choose where to focus your attention, scrolling in the negative or in the positive.
Speaking of attention, and now you have, you have so many people being diagnosed or self-diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and it's like, I can't concentrate, I can't pay attention. It's so common now. So is that correct diagnosis, or is that?
That is a very interesting topic. And I will say two things. First of all, the person who invented that syndrome, he said before he died, he said, listen, this is not a sickness. This is a syndrome. And a syndrome is when some symptoms, not causes, symptoms come together and we cannot explain. But it doesn't mean we live in a time where, again, we are positioned as victims. And we feel very comfortable. Oh, you know what? I have ADC, many, and I'm a victim of that. It's very easy to say that. But that's a toxic behavior to protect yourself. Sometimes it will, but it's a symptom of our times too, that we are exposed to many changes, to many scrolling. So it is an effort to pay attention and to focus. So I'm not a fan of labeling like this because it puts you as a victim of yourself. And that's nothing worse than that, because it makes you toxic and it makes you paralyzed and it doesn't make you prosper. We have to focus we are protagonists of our lives, And I love this, I don't know if you have read the book, Man in Search of Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Have you, Summer? You will now.
I will now.
It's a very classic book.
Yeah.
It's very old. It's the first book at university when I studied psychology. But basically, Viktor Frankl, he survived concentration camp, and he developed this logotherapy. And basically, he said, listen, when it's nothing you can control, like that experience, but it's always something you can control. And it's what it is between the stimulus and the response you give. Mm-hmm. That space between what you experience and how you react is your choice. So we always have a choice how to behave.
And to be conscious of that choice.
Exactly. Like what we're saying, I can go in the car and every morning get stressed. Oh my God, I'm hopeless because there's nothing I can do with the traffic. No, it's something I can do. Can I change the traffic? No. Can I change my attitude? And this is a topic everybody talks. You can change your attitude, but it's true, and neurologically, ADH, it is not a syndrome in your brain always, it's a characteristic. So it's a symptom. Of course, you cannot concentrate, but try. Learn, and I'm talking about it. We are neurodiverse in my family because we have higher IQs and these high sensitivity people, but we are not victims of that. In fact, it makes you more able to do certain things and others you have to learn.
Okay, so just be conscious, make better choices.
Yes.
Around what you're doing and don't label yourself.
Yes. Be conscious that you always can choose how to behave, and that's real.
It does remind me of a quote from another book that I read.
I see.
It was a quote from Stephen Bartlett's book, Happy Sexy Millionaire.
Oh, I haven't read that.
In which he says, you can choose to be defined by what happens to you, or you can choose to be defined by your response to it.
That's perfect. That's
brilliant.
How do you see the workplace culture evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? And you talked about hope. Is there hope?
Well, I believe it is, because at the end of the day, organizations want to make money, want to achieve their objectives, and they are going to realize that the only pathway to prosperity is creating hope and creating workplaces where people can be more, not less. People can be super, not less and belittle. They can be the best versions of themselves, so companies can have more profit, happy people, happy employees, happy customers, right? So I think I'm going to fight for it. So I think I have hope, because you can see it. You can start see some green shots and a shift is happening. The fact that we are talking about this so openly and organizations are trying shows that there is hope.
So there is hope.
We can play our part as well.
Yes,
From
exactly.
a recruiter standpoint, recruit the right leaders.
Yes.
And support the right leaders. You have. I always believe that that head talent hunters or headhunters, you have the ability to know a lot why people leave, and it's such a privilege information to know. And I think that your job should not end there. You can become like partners, and you are partners of this talent for life. So also it makes sense that you go to other spheres. So you play a key role, and obviously you are leading the way. So
and that's where the vision comes in of building thriving organizations.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
Montserrat, thank you very, very much. So insightful.
Yeah, there's so much. Like we could be talking about this topic for
anytime. Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoy, and I think I appreciate your authenticity and making something that is a conversation. So anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to Chat GRG. Be sure to follow us on our socials, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. See you next time.